Welcome, everybody, live from Harrow Borough in London, UK. This is Spirit Matters. I'm here with Kishore, who's in the room next to me. We have this beautifully decorated wallpaper in this London cottage that we are staying on the outskirts of the city. We arrived last night. We'll be here for a week. We're filming a course here. We're filming a course in London, and it's cheaper to buy a plane ticket and come to London than to rent a studio in New York City. Which is why we're here. We'll be here for the week. It's 1 o'clock where we are, but it's we have our New York staple pillar of New York. Acyuta is with us as well, holding it down in the city. And we miss you already, Acyuta. How are you?
I'm good. I miss all of you. I feel like I had a weekend of answered prayers.
That we left? Is that where that came into play? Like that's that we're gone for a
Absolutely
week?
not. No way. I'd kind of we've been doing kirtan with each other, and then but there's accessible kirtan, and then there's like complicated kirtan. And there's something about the complicated kirtan. I guess, I've been a kirtan kid for so long that sometimes I need, like, my mind needs the complicated kirtan to like wrangle my soul, kind of bring me back,
Mm.
like why I was doing all the things. So this weekend was a weekend full of like complicated kirtan. Also, this weekend was the weekend I kind of realized that I'm the old generation.
Yeah, that
How dare
happens.
they? The audacity.
Totally. Totally happens. Were you guys in Florida? There was something going on in Florida, wasn't there?
We were in DC.
In DC, is that where it was? Where Premi
Yeah.
Kirtan everybody was there?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Was there a Kirtan festival or something?
Yeah, so they which is kind of good that we can talk about, being the older generation before you're ready. They had a kirtan festival called Capital Kirtan. And
Oh, I
ironically, that
thought it was
festival
Kirtan for old people.
ironically, this Capital Kirtan started, was kind of like me and Ananta, like my brother and Gauravani and a few people, and we were in the process of recording the 10 Million Moons album. And we've been
Mm.
recording for like 12 hours a day. And when
Phew.
you yeah, when you kind of record with people for 12 hours a day, it brings your kirtan to a new level of psychic synergy. So we decided to go to the local temple there. We were recording in Maryland. We decided to go and do some kirtan that evening because it was a Sunday. What do? We go do kirtan. And the kirtans were so good, and Gorad had a program called Sacred Sounds. And the recordings kind of came out from those weekends, and they just started naming them capital kirtans. And so then the kids got
Mm.
together and they wanted to do a kirtan festival. And when I say kids, what I mean is like Gora's kids who are now like 18 and trying to go to college and be a full-fledged human beings.
What?
When we started this, one of them was like one, if that. She's like one and a half, and now she's like 18. And so then they started this Capital Kirtans festival, and they wanted to do, several days, whole weekend of just kirtan, like eight hours a day. And so Gora said, "Yeah, that's cool." And they said, "We're gonna name it Capital Kirtans." And he was like, "We've been there, done that." And they're like, "Oh, funny, Dad. Like, you think you've done everything already?" And I was like, "So Gora's telling me this weekend, and I'm sitting there thinking, wait, you really mean to tell me they have no idea that we started this?" And he said, "No, yeah, they think I'm a liar." And it's like, "But there's recordings." Like,
We
we'll never know.
We'll ne we'll never know. Can you still
We
hear me?
left off on Friday with "we'll never know."
That's right. On Friday, the
Oh,
same thing happened.
kids. Well, you know what, Acyuta, you aged it.
I'm taking the
Eh,
compliment.
I don't know if anything I said went through. I froze for a second. Did you hear me?
I heard that I haven't aged at all. That's what I'm taking away from it.
That's what I said. I'm glad it went through. That came through, and I also saw Pasha has shifted towards cat heart eye emojis. Those came through. I got those, Pasha. Thank you. Three of them. She loves the pirate song on the 10 Million Moons album. which is a very good
Yeah.
song. 10
Interesting.
Million Moons,
It's like so.
Spotify, 10 Million Moons. Okay, well, that's how Acyuta's doing. How are you, Kishore?
I'm great. I'm ready to hear Ramayan stories. That's what I am.
Ramayan stories. We're getting into Ramayan. So we had a little podcast powwow the other week, and we're like, how is this going, and what should we do? And we wanted to bring some themes into the podcast sometimes of kind of premeditated topics. And Ram Navami, the appearance day of Lord Ram, is on April 10th, at least in America. I don't know what it's like the rest of the world because it goes according to the moon, but April 10th, and we're having a little festival celebration at the Bhakti Center. And we thought leading up to that, Acyuta would tell some stories from the Ramayana, the story of Sri Ram and Sita Devi, and a lot of intrigue and great stories. And we'll have some discussion based around Ram Katha, discussion of Sri Ram. So Acyuta's going to start telling stories, and then Kishore and I are going to sit like little kids, and tell us a little story. It's a little story time, and then we'll chirp in like, "Ooh, that was exciting!" And we'll ask a little question, and we'll tell it elaborate more, and then
Yeah. So this story of Ram, and I love the way that, because I actually love the word kata. It's like it's a sweet word. And it's these stories that are meant to bring joy to the heart, and they're meant to be blissful, and they are also meant to wash away all kinds of sins. And when you normally hear that, it's kind of like, how can just one story just and I think it really goes back to when Kishore was talking about the fact that art and all of these art forms, theater, all of these storytellings are meant to actually bring this social awareness, whether we're dealing with an issue, dealing with a problem, whatever the case. It's like all of these things are meant to perform a greater social service. So like PSA, social service announcement. So with the story of Ram,
Valmiki Muni. This is a PSA service announcement. The Ramayana.
the whole thing.
The whole
So
thing is one big public service announcement. All of Shastra is one big giant public service announcement.
So with Ramayana, we have two mostly well-known big epics in India. And the reason, when you look into it, I'm like, that's not the only epic. Like India was just, that's what they did. They did epic poetry. But the two most well-knowns are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And this Ramayana is so integral to so many of the lives of Indian people all throughout India. It's very, very well known for its topics of like honesty and adherence to vows and truthfulness, kind of above all else, and sometimes even at the detriment of your own livelihood. So I mean, it'll be really good to get into that and why, and what God would have been trying to show through this kind of staunch and strong adherence to vows, even when it looks like it might be breaking his own heart. So I feel like those are kind of really cool themes to get into. And then also, what does that mean for us today? Does that mean that we should be doing that? Does that put us in the same position? Like, what does that do? So once upon a time, there was a king named Dasarath. And this is a time when the norm was having multiple wives. And I'm not just talking like, you hear about like a Utah commune and they've got like 3, 4 wives. Dasarath and many of the kings at that time would have sometimes thousands of wives. Thousands. And sometimes across like countries. Like have a wife in this country and a wife in that country. And sometimes the wives would live in your province as a king, and then sometimes they'd stay in their own provinces, because this was all a way sometimes of creating like political relationships. And one fun fact about Dasarath is that he had thousands and thousands of wives, but also sometimes to save his own life. So what happened was very interesting. There's a demon named Ravan, and he's kind of the villain of this story. Well, not kind of. He really is the villain of this story. He was creating a lot of havoc. Ravan was a demon, which literally like a race of demons. So not just saying like, mindset. He was literally born into a race of demons.
This is
And
heritage.
they and they had like superhuman mystical powers. But Ravana also had a father who was a Brahmin. So like one of the good guys. So Ravan is neither all good nor all bad. Ravan is extremely handsome. He's charismatic. He is extremely strong and powerful. He has the ability to change his form at will, and so he can always appear as handsome as he wants to be. He's got loads of mystical abilities. He's incredibly smart, really learned. He knows how to perform like a good fire sacrifice. And that was like the big thing at the time. Everybody, like if you knew how to perform a good like fire sacrifice, you were like the celebrity. Um, and Ravana knows what to do. So much so that his entire city is made completely of gold. Like this is like real wealth we're talking. Like he's got like wealth the likes of which, yeah, fire sacrifices were the Instagram lives of today. Yeah, it's really true. You would invite like the who's who, and if there were people that were going to that fire sacrifice, like everybody was gonna go. So Ravan was creating havoc all over, so much so that he also had a habit of stealing other people's wives. So when I say it's neither all good nor all bad, like he had some like really problematic issues. And so he had a penchant for stealing other people's wives. So when he would perform a fire sacrifice, you actually have to invite the fire gods to be at your sacrifice. So he would invite them. And Agni, the chief among the fire deities, he kind of sought like some counsel from Lord Brahma, creator god. He said, what should I do? Brahma said, don't go. And they said, he's kind of problematic. He's been amassing all of this power through all these sacrifices. Probably shouldn't go. Agni said, well, he's inviting me. I mean, what do I do? I think I kind of should go. It's like, do I want to show up in the live today? Or like, I mean, they're not all bad. I mean, how can we cancel just everybody? Maybe I should show up. And Brahma says, well, if you go, don't take your wife. And he says, well, why? It's because he steals other people's wives. I mean, you should look out for yourself. And so Agni kind of doesn't heed the warning. He's like, but and the thing was, if you had a wife, you had to show up at the sacrifice with your wife. It was considered incomplete if you didn't have your counterpart with you, which I think is really beautiful. It's like super beautiful to think that you show up at a sacrifice and half your potency, half of your like supernatural prowess comes from your counterpart. Like it's like considered a faux pas not to show up. So he shows up with his wife, and Ravana performs his sacrifice and kind of steals his wife. Steals her. And so then Agni goes back to Brahma and he's like, what do I do? I need a supervisor. And Brahma's like, I told you. He's like, I literally warned you. Like Brahma's like, per my last email. If you if you read up. Ravana is creating all of this havoc. He's going around waging wars with people and going and fighting battles and all kinds of things. But in so many places, it was considered inauspicious to create war at the time of a marriage. Right? It's supposed to be a happy, joyous time, an auspicious time, not a time for creating war. And so Dasarath, in order to avert war, and in order to dodge different kind of wars and things, not only from Ravana, but also from like Parshuram. I think we spoke about Parshuram before. He had a vendetta with warriors. We'll get into that a little bit more in future episodes. But so in order to dodge so many of these different war tactics, Dasarath thought, I know how to get away from war. And whenever he would hear that an enemy was coming to a certain province, he'd just get married again. Like that was his way of like averting. He was like, I'll just get married again. And then they won't want to come and wage war with me because it's supposed to be an auspicious time. So he went from like place to place, and it's like, oh, there's a war coming. It's like, oh, war's breaking out over there. It's like, oh, time to get married. Like, if only, poor Ukraine. Like if this was like the culture of today, Like, just everybody get married. But so this is Dasarath, and he had thousands of wives, but he had three chief ones: Kaikeyi, Sumitra, and Kaushalya. So these will be our three keys that you'll keep hearing their names over and over again. And what they've said about Dasarath's lineage is like, and there's a famous saying that goes in Hindi and in Sanskrit. It's like, um, I'll give up my life, but not forsake my vow. So they were really serious about vows and how they took vows. And vows are going to come into play as a central theme of this epic so much. So Dasarath has the three queens, but still no sons. In many, many tellings, he has a daughter, but no sons. And so he has no one to give his kingdom to. And so he's feeling kind of like bereft. His citizens are looking at him like, why aren't you taking seriously your duties? Which, interesting how like, it's like, we're having fertility issues. Like, you're not taking your duties seriously. It's like, how did this become my fault? Doesn't this seem like a nature issue? But what I really like is that fertility issues, all of these things are not new. Nothing is new. This is a different yuga. So this is millions of years ago. So this is millions of years ago. People were having these social issues, fertility issues, health issues, personal issues, public issues, all of these things. The government is trying to balance how it views its responsibilities and how it takes care of its public. And so we've got all of these themes that were like, wow, the government was struggling back then too. Yeah, nothing's new. All the things that we're dealing with now were in some way, shape, or form dealt with millions of years ago. So what they did when they had fertility issues was they would seek help from the gods. And so Dasarath performs a fire sacrifice. He, goes live on Instagram, calls everybody together, gets the best of the best in the area. He seeks counsel from many, many different sages, finds out how to perform these sacrifices. And these sacrifices sometimes took years to complete, which is such an incredible intention. Can you imagine holding one intention for, it's like Doyal with his like daily prayers. Like, this is actually a yajna. This is a sacrifice, and holding that intention for a year builds incredible results, which you can now see with his 50,000 followers. You too can gain 50,000 followers if you hold a spiritual intention for a year or more. So, he's holding this intention for so long with this view of having a child, but not just for his own selfish motives, but to say, I want to place the lives of my subjects in very capable hands. Right? And it's like looking at what these intentions are deeper and bigger than oneself. And I really do like it, really, I think we could all look at like Doyle's Instagram as a way of thinking, like, what happens when we use it as a service? When it's like, I'm just going to look at this as something greater than myself. And really, I just want to create an atmosphere where we can all be put into capable hands, right? Whether offered to the divine, whether really looking at it, going internal and looking at these deep universal themes is like, how are we all struggling together? How are we all being uplifted together? And then seeing how holding that intention and making that space and inviting in all of these different spiritual atmospheres and different personalities really helps something grow in a way that is beneficial for everyone. This is modern day yajna. So Dasarath performs this yajna and he puts so much of himself into it. And at the end of it, a celestial being appears with sweet rice, which is basically, it's like milk cooked down with rice involved, but it's supernatural. So he says, give this to your wives and you'll have sons. Simple as that. They didn't have to do like, and you might think it's like, now we have to do like IVF and there's all this stuff. No. Their sacrifices were huge. It needed so much wealth. It needed all of the thing. It needed like a community gathering. It needed everybody to be involved. And for some of these sacrifices, they all had to have the same intention. Like, everybody had to have the same mindset. And if just one person, if their mindset was off, it would affect the outcome of the entire sacrifice. And in some cases, we hear in the Bhagavatam, there are people that go into these sacrifices looking for a child. And if one person is seeking a child with this mindset and another person is seeking a child with a different mindset, it affects the mindset of the child. which is kind of like crazy how conception still works and it still has this effect on the child, even if it's supernatural. So it's so interesting to look at how our intentions and our heart-filled intentions really affect the outcome of everything we do, and sometimes the effect of the outcome of what other people do. So when we go into spiritual activities, when we go into kirtans, even when we go into discussions, when we go into satsangs, our intentions are incredibly powerful. What we're walking into that meeting of the minds with can affect the outcome for everyone. So he says, give this sweet rice to your wives and you'll have sons. And really, the first part, which is really cool to look at, is that he does, and they do have sons. From Kaushalya, he has a son named Ram, and Ram is the eldest. Ram is kind of the hero of our story, and Ram is the incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And then from his wife Kaikeyi, who was kind of the favorite, he gets a son named Bharat. And Bharat is going to come into play. But also, what we find out is that Ram, Bharat, and then there's twins from his last queen. Two sons, twins, Lakshman and Shatrughna. And you kind of forget that Lakshman and Shatrughna are twins, and we'll discuss why. But from all of these children, Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrughna, they're actually all expansions of the expansions of Lord Vishnu. So you get Ram and Bharat and Lakshman and Shatrughna, but Lakshman is like the expansion of Anantashesh, which, if you've ever seen Lord Vishnu, he lies on a serpent, and that serpent is Anantashesh, and this is Lakshman. But then you've got Bharat and Shatrughna, who are supposed to be the expansions of Vishnu's conch shell and disc. So Ram, yes, supreme person. It's like, but everyone is also the supreme person? Yes. It's like, how does this work? It's like, this is Vedic science. It's like, also that person is the supreme person. Also, that person's the supreme person. Because this concept of the supreme person is so unlimited and varied, which I also really like. Because no longer do you have a situation where it's like you've got one God, you follow that one God, and if you don't follow that one God, your whole life is wasted. Be damned. Here we have such an unlimited concept of divinity that it's like, no. This concept of your relationship with divinity is also highly personal, and there are unlimited varieties of ways to connect with divinity. And so it doesn't become a situation of right versus wrong, but how you're best able to connect with divinity. So I think that's a pretty good place to end with the advent of Lord Ram, and then we'll get into more as we go along.
There you have it, folks. Let's look at some takeaways that Kimberly got for us. Kimberly, give us some takeaways, and I'd like to hear what Kishore has to say and Pasha loves story time. Let's get some takeaways from Kimberly, if you got any, and then I'd love to hear what Kishore's walking away with.
Thanks for your story. I just got one takeaway today. Our intentions are incredibly powerful. A heartfelt intention of service can affect the outcome for everyone.
Thank you. Kishore, what you walking away with?
Just walking away, there was a lot of themes. We could have gone. We can continue to speak about it and go into a lot of them. But one that I really like that you kind of focused on a lot, Acyuta, was just the sacrifice that people had to make and still continue to have to make, and how kind of epic the sacrifices were, how much time that they took, how much effort that they took. And you were speaking about Dayal and kind of his approach to his social media as a service, as a sacrifice. And I think that that's really interesting, because I feel like that word has lost a little bit of its meaning nowadays, and to look back at these stories and really realize, like, wow, people were really serious about their vows, about their sacrifices, about the austerities that they had to go through. Like, people were serious. And I think it's really good to go back to these stories to remind ourselves of just being a little bit more serious. Yeah.
I like the idea of intention and walking away with, the intention I bring to things. It's so easy to go through things a little mindlessly, and without recollecting the purpose I'm bringing into something. And so I appreciate that a lot, very much so. Thank you. Thank you, Chuta, and thank everybody here for joining us. We'll be diving into story time over the next period of time. Um, and so please continue to tune in. Please continue to share your love with us, and by being with us and sharing with anybody that you think would be inspired to hear these messages, please share them along. Write to us. We always love hearing from you guys. We hope that you're all well. We hope that you be well, and we look forward to being with you again in the near future. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. I can't stop recording or do anything. It's just going. I guess it's not. I guess it's going to keep going until we all get off.
Well, yeah. Wait,
There's no
Rukmini's here.
host. I don't think she's the
Oh,
host though.
I'm not the host.
She's not the
But
host. I couldn't log.
how's London, guys? I joined late.
It's good. I can't log in as the host because I'm in London and somehow it was like kicking me off or something.
Oh,
I had
really?
that when I went to London in the summer. Google refused to like let me sign into any of my usual things because I wasn't in the right location. And then finally, I think you have to like send a code. Like they were like, "Oh, we can send you a confirmation code to your phone," and I was like, "But my phone number doesn't work here."
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I had to go, and then what I did was when I got back home, I there's a way you can download like offline codes that you can then use in case this ever happens. And so I keep like a spreadsheet of just like offline confirmation codes just in case Google ever locks me out of all my stuff. Um, and
Mm,
then you'll be able to like just use one of them in order to verify your identity because that's what happens. Like the verification issue is
Hmm. Yeah. That's a smart idea with the spreadsheet.
yeah.
yeah, they tell you that after the fact. It's like after you have a problem, they're like, you can always download these.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's fine way to tell me now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
all
Krishna. Okay, guys.
maybe
Dana K and
see you
Aid, good to see you
tomorrow.
too. We got to roll. We're on a schedule. We
Yeah,
got
I
to
hope you
keep it
figure it
moving.
out. If I hear of anything that could help faster, I'll text you.
No, I just got to get a hold of Money Manjari. That's all. But I got to call her and get her in the same time it goes to her email, and I'll figure it out. Okay, bye bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Okay,
everyone.